Thanks guys for checking out this demo. We are looking today at the piece in your textbook on page 174. So we had mentioned in class that this is something that we're going to start to look at for our next playing exam. And so when you find on the bottom of page 174, we're looking at this piece called The Chase. And there are a couple different things that I want to do with this in this short video here. I do want to play it for you, just so you have a reference for what it's supposed to sound like. I'll do that here in a little bit. But also, as we've been talking about in class, I want to look at this piece from an analytical angle, just see what it is we're looking at here, what kind of things that we can observe that the composer was doing, in this case, when she put this piece together. And so you can look at hands separately, or you can look at hands together, but both hands really are doing similar things when you take inventory of the whole thing. So at the beginning, for example, when you look at just one hand by itself, or when you look at both hands together, you see that both hands are doing what we've called in the past pentascales. And what I mean by that, when you look at the key A major, we're looking at not a full-length major scale from Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti up to the next Do, but we're looking at pentascale, just the first 5 notes. And so at the beginning, your right hand is doing a pentascale starting at the pinky, going back up to the next pinky, and your left hand is also starting at pinky and going up and down to land on the pinky again. But when you put both hands together, they'll be going in contrary motion. But as we've said before, when we do some of our scales like C major, contrary motion is actually kind of a nice thing when you're playing major scales, or pentascales in this case, because the same fingers will be used in both hands. Look in the second measure, and you can see that by the time you add all these notes together in both hands, those really are just the notes of an A major chord. One thing you are asked to do, you see the E in the right hand with your pinky that is scored as a whole note. And then right underneath that, still in the treble clef staff, you have a quarter rest followed by 3 quarter notes. And what that illustrates is that you're asked, if you can, to hold your pinky down on the E for 4 counts, like a whole note should be held. And then as it's doing that, those quarter notes underneath should be played and released and replayed, so on, for the entire bar. Now this might be a little bit difficult for some of you, and it may take some getting used to as you practice. But the nice thing about this here is that you're doing the same thing in both hands. So in measure 2, both pinkies, and then with the thumb and the third finger in both hands. So already we've gotten through the first 2 bars. Look in measures 3 and 4, you see the exact same thing. It's a repetition. In measures 5 and 6, you should see that basically what happens there is the exact opposite of what had happened at the beginning. It's like that whole pattern from the first line had been taken and turned upside down. So you still have pentascales, you still have contrary motion, but starting with the thumb instead. You can see in measure 6 also the thumbs are sustained, while it's the 3rd and the 5th fingers that are kind of slapping down at the rest of the chord fragment for A major. And then starting at measure 8, this is the end of the second line, what happens here through the rest of the piece is that you have one hand or the other playing a major scale in A, while the opposite hand is sustaining whole notes. So I would say you have to do a little bit of note reading with the hand that is playing whole notes, but when you do that, you're going to see that you're basically just going back and forth between a couple of different notes. No big trick. At the very end, take a look at measures 15 and 16. These are the last 2 bars. You see in the right hand a whole note sustained on A. It's tied to the A in the last measure. The left hand plays the scale, ending on the thumb in the last measure. And your right hand joins in with a whole note on C sharp, so that it makes a bit of a cadence. Now you don't really hear 5-7 leading to 1 to finish off the piece, but you do hear something at the end that sounds like it gives a little finality to what the composer wrote. So let me play this for you from the beginning, and you'll have this recording. You can go back and consult as many times as you like, just to make sure you have the right idea what it should sound like. And I'm not going to play it too fast. This piece doesn't have to go very fast. It doesn't have any kind of tempo indication for what tempo you should take. And that's it. You have several fingering suggestions made throughout, but bear in mind that the fingerings that you see starting in measure 8 are really just scale fingerings that we've learned in class all semester. Now, one quick word that I'll leave you with this piece. In class recently, we've been talking about transpositions, and we were looking at the lines at the bottom of page 173 and the top of 174 as exercises to use to try to get some practice in transposition. I will plant the seed here just to help you to think. This is a really good piece on page 174, the chase, to use in the future as a transposition exercise. So just a word to the discerning among you. This may be something in the future that we use as a transposition exercise for a future playing exam. It may or it may not, but if this piece comes naturally for you after you've practiced it for a couple days, and maybe after this next playing exam when we just play it in its original key, this might make for a really good opportunity to practice something that's not terribly hard. The theory behind this is not terribly difficult, but maybe try practicing this one in other keys. If you can play it in A, can you play it down a step in G major, where all the pentascales and all the full-length major scales will feel the same way? Once you get the patterns that this piece uses, could you play it in a key like C major or D major, where you've got things to kind of navigate with different sharps in different places in different key signatures, but essentially all the pentascales, the major chords, and the major scales feeling the same. That would be a really good and helpful thing to try to practice with this piece once you feel like you've got the nuts and bolts of the chase firmly under your hands.